I mean, it's a human gift, empathy. It's a superpower. If you can do it, you can see so much more.
Hi, we're the cast of Noughts Crosses, and today we're going to be doing a roundtable to give you guys an inside look into the show and how it relates to the world that we live in today. My name is Masali Baduza, and I play Sephy Hadley.
Hi, my name is Jack Rowan. I play Callum McGregor.
What's good? I'm Bonnie Booley, and I play Jasmine Hadley.
Hello, my name is Josh Dillon, and I play Jude McGregor.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Ajayi, and I play Lekon Baku.
Hi, I'm Patterson Joseph. I play Kamal Hadley, and later I will play this very tiny guitar for you all. So I just wanted to ask everybody, what has been the sort of reaction around you guys with your people? Because there are some of us who are in South Africa. I don't know where everybody else is, but a few Londoners.
It's been interesting for me to see the reaction, and the reaction from everybody I found is a curious discomfort. You know, everybody is going, whew, this is hard to watch for many different reasons. Also, depending on where you're at in your life and where you're at with that kind of conversation and how real you interact, how authentically you interact with the elements of it. But the reaction has been, love the performances, love the world. It looks insane. It's just like a visual feast. But all those things are kind of like the candy that pulls you into the uncomfortable conversations you're almost not ready to have with yourself. I really care about what the rest of the world thinks about this, but I've just been watching closely what South Africans are saying, and people love it. They love it in South Africa.
So, but interestingly, Josh's character and Jonathan's character, both Lekon and Jude, they're almost like our opposite antagonists. So I'd be interested to see how those extreme characters were perceived amongst your friends, either of you.
People did not like my character.
I want to say though, Jonathan, everyone that I spoke to loved your performance. They were like, your performance was, yeah. So,
yeah, but the performance is different to the character, you see. Because everybody says, oh my God, what an actor. That's amazing, that actor. And then what did they say about the character?
It was so interesting. It was all kind of messed up on both sides, but some people were saying, oh man, it's nice to see us getting revenge, like on screen.
Oh!
Right?
Wow.
My friends, they're very honest people. And then some other people were saying, but actually, if you look at it, you were still playing the stereotype of an angry black man. And I think both things hold true.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And obviously as actors, we try not to judge the characters. You know, it's really important not to judge who we're playing. Let's find every dimension of their humanity. You know, so I never saw him as a villain, never saw him as like a revenge character. I never saw him as like some kind of superhero for our real world, but just a product of his environment. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Which was liberating to play, you know? I think because this show is so touchy and it's pressing every button of every like association that you have with race. Characters were individually triggering people's perceptions and the lenses in which they look at people and their experiences and everything, you know? So I couldn't expect anyone based on what they looked like to say something that I thought they would say.
Also, I was just thinking about your character, John, and how like it's not two-dimensional. There are so many shades, like throughout the series, you know, you go from seeing like the kind of how horrible privilege and entitlement can be, you know, in a person, but then you also see like a real vulnerability and stuff. And I think that's what, I mean, I know your character wasn't in the books, but like, I think it's the same applies to a lot of the characters in the original books. Like Mallory's done that really well, that it's not actually black and white, you know, you see real people who are three-dimensional and have kind of many facets to their characters, which is really interesting, because 1 minute you're thinking like, oh, they're a stereotype, and they're that kind of person. I know where they're coming from, and then it could be, you know, 5 minutes later, you're like, hang on a minute. So it's constantly, hopefully, asking people to sort of
challenging perception,
challenge their perceptions and sort of change their perspective, which is really cool.
And how did your friends react to Jude's character?
Mike, I don't know really. You'd have to ask them. People were quite sweet, and people quite surprised. You know, I'm not really like that in real life. I mean, so it's quite.
We know you're sweet. We know you're a sweetheart. We do know that.
I'm such a good boy.
He really give you so much love on set because, you know, his character is antagonistic towards everybody, even his own family. The poor actor who's having to play that we slightly treat people a bit like the characters they play. So we gave you a lot. It was easy because you're a lovable guy. But yeah, that's tricky.
Misunderstood.
I feel like now that we're actually having this conversation in this way, I feel like Jude and Lekan are actually mirrors of each other.
Yeah.
And then it brings home that idea that it doesn't matter what race you are or what your background is. You find these people in life. You find these people in families. You find these people reacting this way to situations, which brings us back to that place of like, yeah, sometimes it's just not about race. This is who people are. People are just people.
It's so true. It's like in both characters, you see the reality that whether you're poor or rich, whether you're black or white, no matter what, pain manifests, in pain manifests, you know. And there's a saying I saw during lockdown on Twitter. Someone tweeted something really great, which is that hurt people, cut people, bleed on other people. Do you know what I mean? And that's what Jude is doing. That's what Lekan is doing. That's what we find Callum doing to Sephy and Sephy doing vice versa. And every single character in the show is bleeding on someone who doesn't really deserve to have that in their face, you know? And I guess it's the complexity and the vulnerability of giving your heart to other people, you know, regardless of what they look like. We're social beings, so we socialize. And that trust is misplaced, that trust is respected, you know, and those are the things that inform how you interact in the world. You know, like one of my favorite moments is Jack, when you come back after dropping out of Mercy Point, you say, I'm not a failure. You say, I'm not a failure, I'm not a failure, I'm not a failure. And Sephy's like, no, you're not a failure, you're not a failure. You know, but they're saying it from two different places, two different experiences, two different lives up to that moment, but beautifully, they can both navigate this new decision and this new path in life together, you know?
The other thing to say is about cliche, isn't it? It's like, what are you expecting when you see a program like this? And I think it busts a lot of cliches. I mean, Jack's character, Masali's character, you're both sort of busting within the show the cliche of who you're meant to be as those people. And I think people watching it are expecting something that they didn't quite get. It was more nuanced than they expected. You weren't a good guy all the time. Masali wasn't a wise and open and understanding girl all the time. And that was a big clash. I'll ask Jack first. Could you see the dimensions in the character instantly, or was that something you found through the work?
Well, definitely. I'd say, you know, there's only so much you can know before you actually get on the set. But it was only really when I actually got to Cape Town and got in front of Masali and in front of all you guys where it actually truly becomes alive. And you put the costumes on, you get your hair done a certain way, and that's when you look in the mirror and you feel totally different. And constantly, Callum and Sephy, off the back of what Jonathan just said about the whole sort of that scene, I'm not a failure, they're both learning about each other's worlds, you know, like just because, you know, Masali's character constantly, even from the first scene we have together, when Lekan comes and interrupts a lovely moment, you know, with the whole plaster scene, you know, Sephy may never have seen a plaster that closely on a Noughts skin. And I think immediately she goes, whoa, like that looks really odd on you. Like I've never really thought about it. And I think that's what the audience hopefully get from that too. I know I did when I read it in the book. I went, whoa, I've never thought this deeply about plasters. You know? and it brings me back to when I was in school though. And how, you know, if you graze your leg or anything, you just get a plaster, but that plaster tends to favor a more Caucasian skin tone. So even in something so small, that can make someone feel alienated, you know?
How powerful that a tiny thing like that can make a person feel other, you know, like not included in the normal. Because in Britain, I have been in my own country othered in that subtle way, is magnified by all the other things that happen. Disproportionate incarceration of Black men and women, the disproportionate lack of educational facilities, level and opportunities, and certainly jobs and housing and all the way down the line. And it starts with you're not this, therefore you must work to be this other. And you, even in sitting in the makeup chair, would have been othered. Yeah. But you're being othered, where however you look, you're being othered into what is acceptable.
If I follow on from that point, it's the time when I did military training in Cape Town before we started filming. You know, there was times where I was sort of on my own, and I mean Jonathan was there, so he could back me on this. The sergeant major we had, it was almost like it was for real. He was addressing us as Cadet McGregor and all that, and he was giving Jonathan the role of leader. You know, like you lead these noughts and lead these crosses in marching. But what I found is I looked around and I was the only nought there, you know, or one of four. And as the days went on, there was times when me and Jody, who played a nought, we were the only cast members there. And Dan told like the other soldiers, the other cadets, he was like, no, look at them strangely. They're not allowed to sit with you at lunch. You know, don't look at them. If you look at them, give them dirty looks. And we were sort of, even though it was make believe, you know, I was there for maybe 5 days and we're in the sun, we're working out. You know, I forgot about that make believe a lot of the time. I was thinking on the spot, I was present. And admittedly, I'm a white guy from London, surrounded by culture my whole life. I've never been put in a situation where I've had to be the other. And I remember at the end of that experience, at the end of the military training, I wrote in my notebook, and I just simply wrote, don't forget this feeling.
Lovely.
And it was one of the things that was, as I said earlier in this chat, I said it was a big part of where where I became Callum. It helped with the journey.
That's so powerful. That's so amazing. I mean, that's some deep stuff, right? I mean, as actors, we don't often get to go that deep where it really touches something real that's going to resonate in our lives afterwards. So that's very powerful to hear. And hopefully that's what happens to some members of the audience watching it. But Masali, now you've got a character who is the privileged girl girl who hasn't had to even look at what poverty means, hasn't even had to look at what lack of meritocracy means. How did that go with you?
That's actually one of the things that really attracted me to the script, was playing a Black girl who lived in a world that was designed for her. I thought that was going to be really powerful to play, and it was. And, you know, Sephy's definitely not perfect. She's definitely, you know, still growing and learning, you know, within herself. And in the first episode, I mean, when she called, you know, Callum and, you know, the people around him blankers, like, she would never have thought that is the person that she was. But it's this internalized, you know, racism that she's just been consuming her whole life that is, you know, that led to that moment. And I also will say, this is like kind of off topic, but I think Noughts and Crosses is so important in this like time, especially right now, because the other week in South Africa, one of the stores released an advert where they had like a white woman with her, you know, straight long hair as normal hair, and they had a Black woman with her curly hair as dry and damaged hair. And this is in South Africa. This is in a country that, you know, 80% African and Black. So it's so important for people to watch the show to recognize their privilege and recognize that the system that we live in is not made for Black people, for people of color, you know, and I just hope that it urges people to to make a difference in their own communities, you know, to buy from Black businesses, to support Black people, because the system is not going to do that.
Interestingly enough, I thought when I was trying to examine where Jasmine stands in relation to how she contributes to the oppression of the Noughts around her, and whether she cares about it, whether she wants to be part of making the system better. And I consistently came back to the point where I was like, Jasmine is so selfish, is so caught up in her own needs. She's for me those people who are like, if I'm not racist, I've got white friends, was a person, right? That's Jasmine.
It's like levels of engagement, isn't it? It's like on what part of the spectrum of engaging with this societal problem are you engaging? You know?
Yeah.
Like exactly. Jasmine's like, well, I didn't do nothing, so I'm going to live this life. This is just a genuine question. I'm thinking out loud a little bit, but wrote down, is the word racism or racist specific enough to match the complexity of each individual microaggression?
Wow, that's a powerful question.
This is a genuine random question that came to my head.
I mean, in my mind, racism is a kind of ideology. And most people wouldn't confess to an ideology, even if what we as Black people would experience, what they're doing or what they're allowing to be racist. They wouldn't acknowledge themselves as being ideologically racist, which is why you have that sort of wall that comes up with even white liberals who you might consider your friends and are on side and have never given you any indication of any racism. The wall of defense that comes up is based on the fact that they haven't, yes, as you say, done anything, and their ideology is actually rather eclectic and open. So you can have, you know, there was a famous actor who pronounced on a chat show, political talk show, that he, to be nameless, but you know, look him up, that there was no racism in England. Now, I can see from his point of view that there might not be. They have never had, literally, the light shone on racism around them, so therefore it can't really exist. They have some Black friends, and their Black friends may be like them, a little, you know, affluent or successful, and so they don't really see it for the majority of people. And it is that sort of innocence that frustrates Black people so much, because it's not that you can point at them and go, you are a racist. All you can say is you're blind. I call it snow blindness. It's like everything seems fine until something pops up, like Black Lives Matters, and says, can you really deeply examine how you perceive these people? And that is when you get the clash of very like-minded liberals suddenly thinking, I have to take a side here. And what you're asking me is not just simply to be not racist, but anti-racist. Be active about acknowledging racism around you. And that's a very big leap for I would say the majority of white people, because they're not ideologically racist, but they are by default, by allowing and by their snow blindness and not seeing that meritocracy, which is, I suppose, what this actor was trying to say. It's only meritocracy from a perspective. And it is literally, if you are white, you can't see it in certain spaces. And if you're Black, you see it all the time, that there is a lack of meritocracy. And it is literally relative to your position, at how you see it. And to ask somebody to shift their position and look from another's perspective, and it's a human gift, empathy. It's a superpower. If you can do it, you can see so much more.
I think it's particularly effective in the lives of white people. This book kind of is really sort of shocks people and stuns people into, as we were been talking about, shifting your perspective. It forces you to think about very simple things that mean an awful lot. And I suppose it's particularly effective because we're not often asked to do that as white people.
I remember you, it was like in the midst of a filming, telling me this has been difficult for me because I've had to walk a walk that I've never walked in my life. I've had to go into the mind of somebody who hates an entire ethnicity, because of the color of their skin. Now, of course, there's the other political thing, you're being oppressed by this ethnicity, but you said it was a very difficult thing for you to walk that line. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay, so I mean, absolutely. But what's been so interesting since the show has come out, and particularly with George Floyd, I mean, it's staggering to think that the start of our show, Noughts and Crosses, is essentially, you know, the parallel is just so scary, and it's so shocking, and it's the real world. And you know, you could, so as an actor, I might have found it difficult. You're right, Patton. I might have said that to you, but I really struggled sort of after it came out for and I'm still struggling now to sort of to not feel, and I don't know if you feel the same, Jack, but to not feel slightly like you've fallen like so short of connecting to that feeling, what that must feel like. That I was just raring, I'm kind of raring I'm keen to do for season 2, to do more, to kind of learn and absorb more, and to try and connect on a deeper level.
You took all the words out of me. Do you know what I mean? It's one. There were certain moments in the filming for me where I could go, yeah, I feel like I'm learning a bit more, you know. But then, as Josh said, you know, as an overall, I've only skimmed the surface, really.
Noughts and Crosses is a love story set in the backdrop of racial turmoil. It's a story in which the wealth gap and the class gap are divided for us ultimately to understand that the human experience is similar and vast, no matter where you fall on that spectrum.
They pick up 2 characters, a young Nought male and a young Cross female, and it just sort of follows them on a journey of sort of discovery and learning about each other and falling in love, and how in this world a Nought and a Cross, they can't mix. It's not respected. It's not allowed.
Noughts and Crosses, Mallory Blackman's Noughts and Crosses is better than Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet.
Hell yeah.
Yes, I said it. I've worked quite a bit on Shakespeare, and what you have to understand is Shakespeare was the playwright like any other playwright, except he had a genius that many other playwrights don't have. But what he doesn't do necessarily is write a detailed world. He doesn't need to. That's all contained in the poetry. What Mallory does is tell us why the Capulets and the Montagues are in dispute. We get it in the play, but nobody really cares or remembers why. Whereas this takes the macrocosm of the world that Romeo and Juliet are fighting to be together in, and it makes it center stage. And that's what's more powerful and I would say more adult about this drama, is it says the forces arrayed against this amazing love are so powerful, they are monolithic. It is almost impossible at the beginning for us to see them getting together. And if we had that in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, however powerful it is, and it is very powerful, we would get it to the nth degree, because the battle that they have to fight, the battle in the hearts of each person watching it, and the question, I said this before, is, does love conquer all? Is it powerful enough to destroy a world that is totally set against dividing these people?
Take the situation of the proverbial situation of star-crossed lovers and imagine that the stars that cross are race and class, and Noughts and Crosses invites you to ask the question, could we as human beings uncross those stars and evolve to a place where love can be allowed to thrive?
I've said this before, but being on the set of Noughts and Crosses was like therapy almost, because seeing Black culture celebrated and held to such a high regard that it already is, but seeing that on television, which is something that, you know, you don't see often, it was powerful. You know, I stepped on set when I was, you know, around the Hadleys and around Crosses, feeling like royalty. And Black people are royalty. African culture is beautiful. And this show celebrates that. And that's what I love so much about the show. And I hope that Black people watching the show can see the excellence in themselves represented by the Crosses.
I graduated from the same school that Patson Joseph went to. And for me, those 3 years in walking around those hallways and seeing that black and white picture of him in his graduation show. He was a role model, an idol, someone that I would walk past and see the likes of him and David Oyelowo. So then to be in Noughts and Crosses, being a young, black, privileged man, being able to stand and speak from my chest, and then seeing him on set, it's just chef's kiss. I can't even, the words, it's difficult to find the words. Do you know what I mean? But hopefully this is not an answer to the expression of black voices, but it's the beginning of a very, very long expression of black voices.
I want to say that I never imagined that in my lifetime as a black actress, I could walk onto set not having imagined, by packing into a suitcase a variety of wigs and a variety of ideas around how I can fit into the beauty standard. For the first time, how I came was enough.
It was an honor to be telling this story, which hopefully speaks to so many people. And it's not often that you get to do a job that's so challenging as an actor, but also it's going to be challenging for an audience. So it just felt like a real honor to be part of an amazing group of people telling this story.
Likewise, it was an honor for me as well. It was nice to see that when the brief was sent out from casting directors, the brief wasn't just, oh, we want to see, it was specific, as in we need a young black male, as in, so I'm not going to waste anybody's time. This is who we want. And hopefully in the future, more projects can start from the ground up where it's written for black actors, not, oh, we'll just cast somebody because we need to appear diverse, Yes. I think Noughts Crosses is a show. It's based on a book. We always needed a female black lead.
We hope you enjoyed hearing more about our show. Please don't forget to stream Noughts and Crosses for free on Peacock.